Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 meeting of the Lebanon Utility Service Board. Let the record reflect that the meeting was properly advertised and that all board members are present tonight. Please rise and join with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of our minutes from the July 21st meeting. Everyone had a chance to review those minutes. Any corrections or changes or discussion? If not,
Motion to approve.
Second.
motion made by Tim, seconded by Bill to approve the minutes from July 21st, 2021. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, our next item is to declare, it looks like 800 water meters as surplus. It's an action item, and David Bailey is here tonight to answer any questions we might have on that. How's it going, David?
All right, how are you?
Good, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I'm the metering supervisor. My name's David Bailey, and I would like to declare 800 water meters that we've removed as surplus. We believe the resale value of the meters are approximately about $2,400. Because the total value is less than $5,000, we would follow the Indiana Code 52222 in the disposition of the property. The summary you guys all received. So that's it.
All right, pretty simple. Any questions for David about these meters or the process?
So you plan to do a private sale, right?
I'm sorry, what?
You plan to do a private sale?
The person that, or the company that we are purchasing our new meters from, is going to buy our old ones.
Okay.
All right, anything else for David? If not, I would entertain some motions.
I move to approve the request to declare the list of 800 water meters as surplus and for them to be sold in accordance with IC 5-22-22.
Second.
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Bill to approve the request to declare the 800 water meters as surplus. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item tonight, our General Manager, Ed Baskell, will discuss some cybersecurity upgrades. And I will say that Sandy is here as well to answer any questions that we might have. Ed, you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just had an executive session where we discussed in detail the cybersecurity upgrades. Excuse me, we just had an executive session where we discussed in detail the cybersecurity upgrades that we are planning. Anyone that watches the news knows that we are in a high threat environment with the increase in ransomware attacks. So we've come up with a solution. We're not going to discuss in detail the security measures we're taking, but Sandy Solutions had what we thought is probably the best solution, and I'd like to propose that the board ratify the Sandy Solutions contract at $2,375 per month. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Ed. Anybody have any questions or discussion in general about this item? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the contract with Sandy Solutions to provide cybersecurity in the amount of $2,375 a month.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Tim to approve the cybersecurity upgrade with Sandy Solutions. Any other questions or discussion on this item? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Like our next item is Electricom LLC invoice, an action item. And Jeff Greenow's here tonight to address that. Hi, Jeff.
Hi. I'm here this afternoon to bring to the board to get approval for retroactive invoices for Electricom Boone County RMC for electric line relocations. This was an NDOT project on State Road 39 South and Enterprise Drive. At this location, the poles that were there, both Boone County RMC were on them and lived in utilities. And due to the fact NDOT was installing the traffic signals, we had to raise our lines. Normally, the utility that is on top of the pole is the owner of the pole, so they take lead in the project. So my staff met with Boone County RMC personnel and to determine what was the best way we was going to do this project. It was determined to have Boone County RMC go ahead and move our utilities up for us due to the fact there was limited space to work, there was major traffic control issues, expensive. There was other, limited space and traffic control. So they came to us and gave us a verbal estimate for the job. I reviewed that estimate and I took it to my general manager, Ed Basquil, and we discussed it and we determined that was the best route to take. Well, it turns out Boone County RMC used their electrical contractor to do the work on this project. So the original verbal estimate they gave us came out a lot higher than expected. The cost was still very reasonable for the work that was done. Normally, I would have brought this to the board for approval, but now I'm asking for the board to retroactive approve pursuant to Indiana Code 36-1-416.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that since this time, we've gone through a process of training on staff on our contracting process, Q&A with Jeff Jacob, our attorney. I think the board's actually participated in that way at a board meeting about how our contracts are done. We've got some new forms like an RFQ or request for quote form. The work it's good work. It's just the contractor did it more expensive than it would be for us to do it in-house. We were short-staffed at the time, and as Jeff said, Boone RMC was the lead on the project. This project occurred in January, and we're just bringing it to the board now because we initially got a bill from Boone RMC for their full amount where they'd hand-corrected it what our portion would be. So I met with my counterpart at Boone RMC, Bill Conley, and found out that they use this contractor like an auxiliary crew, and they build on a T&M basis. They didn't really have an exact estimate for this project they could show us. So we have some lessons learned on this, but I think this is the right thing to do. The work's been done. It's a good price. It's similar to the retroactive approval that we did for water, wastewater in the last meeting, in the sense that it was a time-sensitive project with NDOT. So I just wanted to add that. And sorry.
Okay, thanks. That's.
So have we paid these invoices, or you're asking for approval to pay them?
We're asking for approval. We have not paid those yet.
Okay.
And like you said, this work has been done. It was good work. We knew kind of upfront about what the cost would be, and now it's just time to pay what we owe on it, right?
Right.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, the amount that they initially gave them verbally was within my signing limit, or we would have brought it at the time.
Sure.
But it was a lot more, so.
So Ed, if I heard you correctly, we're trying to move away as much as possible from verbal agreements of this sort?
Yes. Whenever we commit to something that the board needs to approve, we're going to get a contract and a written agreement.
Yeah, that's
100% away from that.
Okay.
I would agree we should do that.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Any other questions for Jeff or Ed? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we move to retroactively approve the Electrocom invoices in the amount of $18,683.42 in accordance with IC 36-1-4-16.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Jim to approve the Electrocom LLC invoice in the amount of $18,683.42. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Jeff. Looks like you're staying put for a second.
I'm still up here.
All right, the next item is the transmission poles testing, and take it away.
Yes, this is an item I'm requesting that the board approve the 69 kV loop transmission poles to be tested. These poles were last tested between the years 2002 and 2005. Normally, these poles should be tested every 10 years to be in compliance with the NESC, which is National Electrical Safety Code. We have 261 transmission poles that are in need of testing around our loop system. We reviewed the process that was done back in 2002 to 2005. Osmos did the pole testing, and we had some literature from them, and we determined the process that they used was the best process that Lebanon utilities could utilize for pole testing. So to acquire 3 bids, I had to go out and find 3 companies that do comparable work to exactly what we were wanting. I reached out to Osmos, which they returned a quote. I reached out to a company called Alamon, which they do the same type of testing. They gave a reply. We didn't have enough work for them to utilize their crews to come here, so they declined. I reached out twice to a company called Geoforce, and I never did get a reply back from them. The Osmos quote came back. They gave an average. It was going to cost $100 per pole. Due to the size of these poles, we wanted to add a 10% contingency to the total bill. The diameter at the base of these poles vary, and sometimes they're larger or smaller depending on the pole and the amount of treatment that may or may not be needed to treat these poles. So the estimate that came in from Osmos would be $26,100 plus a 2,610% contingency cost, which gave a total of $28,710. This testing is in the 2021 budget. It's under line item contractual services and testing. So I'd like to request the board approve the quote from Osmos to perform pole testing on our 69 kV transmission pole loop system for the not to exceed amount of $28,710 for all documents to be signed by General Manager Ed Baskell and legal review of the contract.
I've got a question on their quote. Where does it, I'm looking at the pricing schedule. Where does it show the numbers that you were talking about, $100 a pole?
That was what Mr. Paul Brewster came back to us and gave us that quote. He is the head of Osmos.
So it's not on your proposal here?
It is in there at some point, yes. There's the packet that I sent. It's,
I mean, it shows visual, it shows a lot of different pricing, but it didn't.
But the contract, what he told you was based on the number of poles you need, the quote is roughly based on $100 a pole.
yes, correct.
And that was included in an email, is that
You have
correct?
that
Yes,
right,
yeah,
in
that-
right?
yeah.
And that's for testing only,
Testing of the pole and treatments,
and treatment?
and the treatment, yes. That's why we added the contingency cost. Some poles may need a little more treatment than others.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit, because when I read through the proposal, when you talk about treatment, you're talking about that paste around the bottom of the pole, right?
That is correct.
And it seemed like to me that was included in the proposal together with boring treatments that might be required. It's also included in that 100, so I'm just sort of curious of what contingency would include.
Well, that's what it goes back to, the diameter of the poles. The bigger the pole, the more excavating they're going to have to do and the more treatment, more product they're going to have to use on the pole. Not every one of the poles have the same diameter at the base of the pole.
This is a not-to-exceed amount, right? So
Correct.
the number could and probably will, you never know, come in less than this because we added a contingency?
Correct.
Do you anticipate any pole costing more than $100 a pole for this service?
No, not anticipating that at all.
But it could happen.
I asked Mr. Brewster the same thing. I wanted to make sure we had the proper amount to bring to you.
Thank you.
So if I may weigh in, the way I understood this to work, and maybe I need to go back in and relook at this, Jeff, but the way I understood it is that the price breakdown, you wouldn't have the way I understood that $100 a pole estimate. On every pole, you're going to have line one visual, so you will have that $22 price. You may not have sound and bore, you may not have partial excavation, you may not have the treatment, but you will and you may not have the rock backfill. But what you may have is an average cost of $100 per pole is what they see in our situation for these, in this total menu of costs.
Yeah, and that's an average cost too. It could be less. If the pole's in good shape, they won't have to do much, so the cost will be a lot less per pole.
But they're going to have, on that instance, at least $22.38 per pole for a visual inspection.
That's correct.
So they'll have at least that on every pole.
At least, yes.
And
And at least to partially excavate too, they're always going to dig around the pole.
so then and so you're then going to have that menu of additional costs for treatment, for a total of approximately $100 per pole. That's the way I understood that email to work in conjunction with this proposal. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't need to secure a $100 per pole estimate in this agreement unless the board wants to see that. We have some more work to do on this. We've got a general services agreement with them and this underlying, or this proposal. So if you guys want to see that anticipated $100 per pole language in there, we can add that, because this is still...
I don't see that as anticipated. I see that as what the company has agreed to, no matter what the condition of the pole. Am I wrong, Jeff?
The way I understand it, some of them may come in at $88.
No, that's not the way I understand it.
Okay.
Which one of us is understanding correct, Jeff?
That, I don't have,
I think it's going to vary by pole, because I think where the $100 came from is we initially were looking at a prior proposal where it was a lot less per pole, and we met with Paul Brewster, Sandra, Jeff, and I, and we came to realize that the $100 average is more appropriate for a transmission pole because it's a lot thicker around and it's a lot taller. But each individual pole is going to vary, and the not-to-exceed amount that we're requesting should cover all the poles on average.
Do we have a copy of the email?
I'm looking at it.
Oh, okay.
yes, I do have.
And it says that, so I would push back, Jeff, and say, I think that the maximum price can exceed $100 per pole, and likely will, but the average for our system for transmission loop poles is going to be about $100 per pole. And he's giving us an informal estimate in order for us to reach that not to exceed 26,000, based upon their proposal. So that's why I've not sought to include that in their pricing structure. I'm happy to put that language in if that's the board's desire, but it would be contractor represents an anticipated $100 per pole average cost and agrees that they will not exceed $26,000 in cost.
Based upon the listing that they have here, I think we should also include in that $100, here's what's included in the $100, and here's what may get into your contingency, the services provided. Because Jeff makes a very good point. Poles are gonna be different.
Absolutely.
They're gonna walk up and probably drive by, I don't know this, but drive by or look at them and go, man, this is in great shape, and move on, and that's quick, versus one, they're gonna have to dig out, and they're gonna have to go down, they're gonna have to do different things, so.
They're gonna dig every one of them, right?
I'm going to dig every one of them.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Well, and then we need to be clear on that, because I don't know that that's necessarily in the spec.
No, it's not.
What are the services included for $100, and what would we get into the contingencies, would be my request.
I think that's
When
what,
you read the rest of the proposal, you'll see what's included. If you look at that list of services and cost
The
per
menu,
service,
yeah.
it's quite frankly confusing.
it is, yeah.
But when you look at the services provided, it's pretty doggone specific.
Yeah, all the Exhibit As, I've gone through them, and that's why I did not believe that $100 needed to be included. I think Tim's point is somewhat covered, but it is a little, it got a little detailed for me to understand. So from here, if it's the board's will to approve this, there's a little bit more contract work subject to Ed's and my review. I'm happy to do that offline and have Ed approve it based upon what I've heard here today, or bring it back to you for approval. I'm pretty comfortable with understanding what happened and fitting that language in,
Okay.
but it's totally up to you guys on how do you want to.
Yeah, the proposed motion includes a legal review of contract.
Yes,
So
and Ed's
I
approval.
think what you just
Yeah.
said satisfies me as a board member anyway.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with the dollar amount, I'm comfortable with contingency, I just, again, let's specifically call it out to where it's not confusing. Because we've had a confusing conversation here the last 15 minutes.
And I will put that, I will include that acknowledge not to exceed. That, you know, if this were a closed session, I find contractors work to get to that number.
Yeah.
But if this were a closed session, that number's publicly available. So in another setting, I might not put that in there, but they agree that they won't exceed that amount. And we'll put that in the agreement if that's acceptable to you, Jeff.
Yes.
All right, good stuff. Any other questions for Jeff or Jeff? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the contract with Osmos to perform pole testing for our 69 kV transmission loop for a not-to-exceed amount of $28,710, and for all documents to be signed by General Manager Ed Baskell upon legal review of the contract.
Second,
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Bill to approve the contract with Osmos for pole testing of the 69 kV transmission loop for a not-to-exceed amount of $28,710, subject to legal review and signature from our general manager. Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, next item is transfer of a vehicle to the city of Lebanon from the utilities. And our legal counsel, Jeff Jacob, will address this item.
Thank you. As you recall, I believe this was the subject of a working session. Since that time, Mr. Stoner pointed out and has done a little bit further legwork. In the working session, if you recall, there were two items. There was a bucket truck and a chipper trailer. The subject of this resolution is the bucket truck only. Mr. Stoner has discovered that the chipper trailer is no longer used and has likely no value. We are researching that. I believe it's held by the street department. I think Jeff Greeno is in the
We
process.
have it now.
We have it.
Picture of it.
Yeah, they
Jeff
got
went
it.
Got it, so.
We have it now.
Yeah, they picked it up.
And we're going to value that, confirm what it's sort of worth, and that will likely be a declaration of surplus or scrap motion to you in the coming days. That having been said, Resolution 2021-05 dealing with the bucket truck is as follows. Whereas this joint resolution between the City of Lebanon Parks Department and Lebanon Utilities is intended to transfer vehicles is entered into upon pursuant to Indiana Code 36-111-8. Whereas Common Council for the City of Lebanon Parks Department and Lebanon Utilities by and through the Service Board are governmental entities for the purposes of Indiana Code 36-111-8. Whereas the utility through its Service Board is the owner of a certain vehicle generally described as a GMC bucket truck, as generally described in Exhibit A attached here 2, which is the title to the vehicle. The utility no longer uses the utility vehicle, but incurred expense storing and maintaining the same, whereas the city can use the utility vehicle and agrees to take ownership from the utility. Whereas the utility wishes to have access to the vehicle as needed and has agreed to transfer ownership of the utility vehicle to the city. Whereas IC 36-111-8 permits governmental entities to transfer property for terms they determine to be in their best interest, provided that each passes substantially similar resolutions. Now therefore be it resolved, the utility agrees to transfer its ownership interest in the utility vehicle as generally described in Exhibit A to the city, and be it further resolved, the utility directs the general manager to execute any and all necessary documents to effectuate this resolution, which would likely be the signing of the title.
Does this have to go to the city council?
So we will provide a resolution to the city council, however they want to handle accepting it. I usually, this one is a little unique, but typically in these arrangements, they would pass a resolution accepting it
Okay.
and transferring consideration to us. This is a little different in that they're maintaining it and allowing us to have access to it should we need it in the future. So I will send this to
Rob
their
Schein.
attorney and let them know.
Okay.
All right, anything else, Jeff?
That's all I would ask for the board's approval of this resolution.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve Resolution 2021-5, a joint resolution transferring the vehicle between the Lebanon Utilities and the City of Lebanon Parks Department.
Second.
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Tim, to approve the resolution 2021-05, transferring the 2001 GMC truck from the utilities to the City of Lebanon. Any other questions or discussion?
I'm going to have to abstain because I'm the fleet manager for the city.
Noted. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And as Bill said, he abstains. All right. Thank you. Next item is virtual attendance for board meetings, action item, and Jeff Jacob will also address this item.
Thank you, Board. By way of background, the State Board of Accounts reached out earlier this year recommending, and Sandra picked up on this, recommending an adoption of a policy for virtual board attendance. I put together a resolution based upon that recommendation, which you have in front of you in the board packets. Mr. Smith has pointed out correctly that between the drafting of that and providing that to the board, this public law has been codified with some additional requirements in it, some of which will be well-received, some of which will not be well-received. But at this time, I want to get a little bit of direction from the board on how they'd like to see this resolution come back to them. My request would be to table this until the next meeting. The new law allows us to be a little bit more restrictive in some areas, make some suggestions in others. One of the main areas that this resolution differs from what the Indiana Code provides is that it's got some restrictions on what can be voted on. Budgetary items, a tariff such as rates, cannot be voted on virtually. It's also got restrictions on attendance and in terms of how many, the sequence of meetings. You cannot attend virtually in 3 meetings virtually. So there's some additional restrictions that I'll bring back to you. It also has some notice requirements that talk about that you may require that a board member provide some period of time of notice that they're not going to be able to attend in person and attending virtually. So unless I hear otherwise, my suggestion to the board, and that they could deal with this on a case-by-case basis, but that we draft this to be just minimally meeting the statutory requirements, and any of the areas where there are suggested additional restrictions, we hold off on that until there would be a problem and address that internally within the board. So that's sort of my suggestion and request that this be tabled until the next meeting.
I agree.
I find it interesting, we'd pass a state law that would make us inoperable during a pandemic.
There's a section that allows for total virtual meetings when there's a state of emergency declared.
Which is what we've done that, yeah.
And
And Tim,
in fact, that state of emergency has been extended to August 31st, if I'm correct.
yes, and so Tim, your point is well taken. The resolution that you had in hand was sort of short-term pandemic drafted in this hybrid state. The state code goes further and says, hey, state of emergency or not, you can operate in this fashion. And I think it's going to be more restrictive than what you see here, and will require some additional management by Danny in terms of keeping counts on who's attending virtually and who can participate if they were to participate virtually 2 meetings in a row. So
And also virtual, anybody attending virtually will require roll call votes for the,
Correct.
Wherever.
So if that's
for
done.
each motion.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
But you still have to maintain a quorum,
it has to be a physical,
physical
yeah,
quorum.
no, so the statute provides that person counts towards a quorum. So yes, but you have to have a quorum. But
Okay,
that virtual attendee counts towards your quorum.
okay.
So,
But there also has to be a majority of members physically present. So for us, that'll mean
Well, if you
3.
have 50%, for us, it's still a quorum, that's 3 people. So
Yeah.
see what I mean?
that's part of what
Okay,
the State Board of Account resolution or suggestions and versus what you've got in front of you versus what the codification is. We're sort of in this limbo state. I'd like to dust settle and digest that and get it back to you,
Let's table it,
please.
okay.
Yep, please.
Second.
Thank you for catching that.
All right, so there's a motion, Bill, to table the virtual attendance to meetings, and second by Aaron?
Correct.
Yes.
All right, all in favor to table this motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, item 9 has been tabled. Next item is An action item, use and issuance of employee credit cards. Sandra Morgan's here tonight. Hello, Sandra.
Hello. So good afternoon, everyone. I am here tonight to discuss the continued use of credit cards by Lebanon Utilities. And a little bit of background is we have had 8 corporate credit cards since 2001, and every 4 years those just renew. So what we use those credit cards for mostly is for travel. So if people are out, we use that for their hotel rooms, for their airfare, if they have to get a car, and for their meals. Then the other things that we use our corporate cards for a lot is we do have to purchase things online occasionally, and they will not bill us. So we will use them for those types of items. Over the past year, we have found out that the bank will no longer issue what we call corporate credit cards. And what that means is they're in the name of Lebanon Utilities and not in a person's name. So we are down to 2, which makes it very difficult when anyone at all is traveling or if somebody checks one out and somebody else needs one. So what we have learned from the banks is that they still will offer us a corporate account, but we do have to issue the cards in employee names, just as authorized users. So we would still be responsible for the bill. The employees are only authorized users, and then they would have to show ID or a PIN number to be able to use those cards. And it's my understanding the biggest reason for that is fraud. With our corporate cards, in 18 years, we have only had 1 fraudulent charge. It was caught by the bank because it was in another country. So we haven't had that issue, but I think the banks have had that issue. So they want us to switch those over.
See, how many employee names will be on the cards?
So it's going to depend. What we're going to do, you'll hear, I think, when Jeff reads the resolution here in a minute, is we are going to start by asking each department head, so Ryan, Jeff Greeno, myself, Debbie Van Camp, Alyssa, we're just going to ask, who do you think will be traveling, or who do you think we need to get those in? And then we'll also verify with the employee that they're comfortable with that. So the offset is if an employee travels, if they don't have a card in their name, they're going to have to pay for all of their own expenses and then submit it for reimbursement, and it'll take us a week or 2 to get that money reimbursed back to them. And if it goes 3 weeks between board meetings, that can be an even longer time frame.
The cards, when they're not in use, will be kept in the office, even though somebody's name is on it, correct?
Yes. So that's kind of one of the requirements that we have, and that I don't know that we have that necessarily anymore, Jeff, as far as the law goes, but we do still follow that law. We keep those cards locked in the finance department. We are required to maintain a log. That's right in the State Board of Accounts manual. So every time somebody checks out a card, they have to tell us why and what they're using it for, what they think the estimated charges will be. We log all that on a spreadsheet, and then when the employee returns the card, we check it back in through the spreadsheet.
Sandra, is there a cost to the number of cards we carry?
To date, there has never been a cost. So depending upon who we negotiate with, the bank we're currently talking to, there's not a cost to it, but depending on who we go through, potentially there could be an annual fee. That the State Board of Accounts has approved that we are allowed to pay an annual fee if that's what ends up being negotiated, but I'm hoping that we would have no annual fee. We do pay those monthly, so we don't pay any interest. And per State Board of Accounts rules, if somebody gives us stuff late or anything like that, or if we pay it late, we're actually responsible for the penalties and interest. Lebanon Utilities is not.
Right.
And that's been the case since we've had the corporate cards also.
Hey, Sandra, and it might be mentioned in the resolution, but we require receipts for every transaction from employees, correct?
Yeah, we absolutely do. That's another requirement, is you can't use credit cards to kind of bypass the accounting system at all. If you purchase something with a credit card, you still have to have a purchase order. You still have to have a detailed receipt. And I'll give you an example of that. If you go to Arnie's and you buy 2 large pizzas, you know how you get the credit card slip and then you get the itemized slip? If somebody just brings us a credit card slip that says $42, we won't pay it. They have to give us the one that says we ordered 2 large pizzas. and that is a State Board of Accounts guideline also, and that's true credit card or no credit card. We have to have an itemized receipt for everything.
So how often would we have to use, how often do you anticipate using these cards?
So I took a look at the last 3 years, and on average, the credit card gets checked out about 100 times a year. Like I said, we had 8 before, so if it was 3 people in the same week, that wasn't an issue with us. Now that they're in individual names, or that they will be, I would anticipate most people don't travel 5 to 10 times a year. You know, you might have somebody go to an IMPA meeting and they're over lunch. So I would say there will be a few people that do some of the online purchasing. But other than that, for travel, I'd say most people won't use it more than 5 or 6 times a year. But keep in mind, any one of those times will generate 20 to 25 receipts. If you go to a national conference, you're going to buy 3 meals a day, you're going to put your hotel on there, so you're going to have a lot of transactions.
Well, wouldn't it be better just to stay with the expense report?
A lot of the employees can't afford that. So if we have an employee that goes somewhere, for them to have to pay for so anything they do pay for themselves, we do use an expense report for. But to pay for their own hotel and all of their meals for the week, it just becomes a hardship for certain employees, which is why we've always used the company credit cards for that.
I think that makes sense. My last question, and then I'll let Jeff probably detail everything that I'm asking, but is there something specific that prohibits personal expenses, even if the employee intends or states that they're reimbursing the utilities for that personal expense?
Yeah, they're not allowed to do that. It does state that, I believe, very specifically in the resolution. And we also you have the State Board of Accounts guidelines that say utility funds can't be spent on anything personal, so you have that. Then you also have our internal credit card policy that says you can't spend it on anything personal. When somebody checks out a credit card, we have them sign a sheet that details all of the rules. And then I believe there is a separate sentence in the resolution that Jeff's going to read that specifically says you can't use it for personal use, even if you say you will pay us back.
Yeah. So I won't ask anything else, thanks.
No, that's okay. Occasionally, we have little issues. If we do, we normally give people like one morning to say, hey, maybe we weren't very clear, this is something you shouldn't have done. If it happens again, we won't issue you a credit card the next time.
Just a question on, like, if one of us would attend a conference, would we have one of those credit cards or not?
So if I knew that one of you was going to attend a conference, I would just need to know that a few weeks in advance, and then we can go out and we can get that card.
Why wouldn't we just purchase cards for, not purchase? If there's no charge for the cards, why wouldn't everybody have a card and you just check it out if you need it?
We thought about it. Originally, I was going to just do one for all 55 people, but I believe in the guidelines that I read, it said must be requested. So that's why we have to go out and have the supervisors make sure that that's okay and to provide me back a list.
Is that true?
I believe so.
From a legal standpoint, it must be requested? Okay. Well, then maybe
That's what I read in the State Board of Accounts guidelines, unless I read it wrong, so.
No, I can happy to go back and look at that, but, if I understood that, your question in that section correctly, as Sandra and I have discussed this, there may be some
Right.
employees that don't want their name affiliated with that card, and,
it also means they can't travel then.
well, they would have to personally pay for it and seek reimbursement.
Right, on an expense report. I still think expense report's the best way, but it's just my
Yeah,
opinion.
I don't disagree, but when you start asking people to front $1,000, $2,000 a week for hotel rooms and flights, it can put strain on.
Would it be that much?
Well, I mean, a couple hundred a night for 3 nights on a hotel in a major city plus
$500
flights.
round trip airfare.
Nothing's cheap anymore, Bill.
No, I know it's not. I know it's not.
$100 for a rental car if you have it.
Anybody, any other questions for Sandra, or before we let Jeff read this?
I can tell you that as this is an area that I get pretty nervous about, and years ago, sort of got this, oh my, what is our policy? And I think we revisited it. And I visited with Sandra on this on several occasions. And I don't want to vouch for it, but I'm pretty satisfied with the keeping them locked up, having to sign them out. There's some accountability there, and there's a reminder each time, hey, this is not yours, that goes with that. I have also weathered a number of, what do you mean I have to go sign this out and check it out? I'm not, I'm the head of this organization, and your predecessor, I can't carry the credit card with me and I have to go sign it out. Sandra's pretty regimented about that, and I think it drives home the point. And I know you've weathered a few of those storms.
It's not fun.
But when she says she keeps them locked up and you have to check them out, she means she keeps them locked up and you have to check them out.
Yes.
Yeah, when things go sideways, it's generally because policy or procedure is lax, so.
Yeah, and accounts payable, when they get the credit card bills, they match every single detailed receipt. If they don't have one, they go back to the credit card log to see who had it checked out. And then if they can't provide that receipt, we bill them for that. Even if it was a legitimate business expense.
Yeah, and I know that sounds harsh, but there are ways, generally, most companies, you can call and they'll find the transaction and provide a receipt.
Yeah, and we do try that.
Yeah.
We try to get the employee to do it first.
Yeah.
But we will help with that. But if we can't find it, we do have to bill it.
Yeah, and I have no problem with this policy. There's been some past problems from years ago that I've heard about that this helps address. So I think it's a good policy.
Right, anything else?
Resolution 2021-07, a resolution approving the use and issuance of employee credit procurement cards. Whereas Lebanon Utility Service Board operates a municipally owned utility known as Lebanon Utilities. Whereas it is the duty and responsibility of the board to maintain the fiscal integrity and efficiency of the financial transactions of the utility by adopting certain policies and procedures. And whereas pursuant to Indiana Code 3613 et sec, home rule, under the appropriate conditions, the board may authorize the use of credit cards and purchasing cards in employee names. Whereas the State Board of Accounts authorizes credit card use through an approved resolution or ordinance. Whereas the utility desires to approve the use of the employee credit cards by utility employees and officials in performance of utility duties when such use is in the best interest of the utility. Now therefore be it resolved by the board that this resolution is adopted in compliance with State Board of Accounts, which authorizes the use of credit cards and purchases, for purchases and payments. 2, the utility CFO is authorized to obtain credit cards titled for utility employees on the request of the department head. 3, a list of all credit cards issued to the utility shall be maintained by the finance department. 4, credit cards will be locked in the finance department, and a log shall be maintained including the names and individuals requesting the use of cards, their position, estimated amounts to be charged, fund and account numbers to be charged, and the date the card is issued and returned. 5, when the purpose for which the card has been issued has been accomplished, the card should be returned to the custody of the finance department. 6, the credit card shall not be used to bypass the accounting system. Purchase orders are issued to encumber and track expenses to provide the board and other officials with timely, accurate accounting information and monitoring of the accounting systems. 7, the payment of credit cards be subject to the audit requirements of the accounts payable vouchers in conformity with Indiana Code 51110, 3648, and the regulations of State Board of Accounts. Electronic invoices or itemized receipts are required for all credit card purchases, including restaurant charges. Payments will not be made on the basis of a credit card statement. Signed charge slips showing the total charge only with no itemization of the items purchased are not acceptable. It is the responsibility of the employee authorizing the charge to obtain proper itemized receipts. Any interest or penalty incurred due to the late filing or furnishing of documentation by an employee should be the responsibility of that employee. That the department head and employee shall be responsible for safekeeping of the credit cards while in his or her possession and immediately returned to the finance department once the purpose of use has been accomplished. 9, utility credit card shall be used for purchases relating to the performance of the utility only. No personal use of utility credit card is permitted, even if an employee offers to reimburse the utility for the employee's personal use of the utility credit card. Such permitted uses include, but are not limited to, A, purchasing of supplies and equipment of the use and benefit of the department, B, travel and lodging expenses of departmental personnel while traveling on approved business, C, meal expenses of departmental personnel while traveling on approved business, provided that such expense may not exceed any authorized per diem for meals. Reasonable tips or gratuities are allowed as meal expenses if service is provided as part of the meal. Tips shall not exceed 20% of the bill. No charges for alcohol will be permitted. D, approved training and education costs for departmental personnel. And E, any other use required for the efficient operation of the department when use of vouchers, checks, and other means of credit are not possible, provided that said use has been approved by the department head. 10, the utility CFO is authorized to revoke credit cards that have been used in violation of the utility policy. 11, this resolution shall have immediate effect. All acts undertaken to implement this resolution are hereby ratified.
Jeff, I had a question. You said the tip was 20%. I thought it was 18%.
We have a credit card policy that's 18%. The average is 20% at this point, so if this is adopted, we will modify that policy and just say updated by resolution blank.
Okay.
I like the resolution. I do believe there should be a second person who is authorized and accountable for the same policy, not just Sandra. Sandra deserves her vacation every year, and according to this, nobody can get in to get cards or order a new card if she's not here.
Well,
And again, having years of experience of investigating credit card fraud, I think authority and accountability for multiple sources is what can protect and be best for the business.
That's good. I think I don't know if the bank will allow it, because I was recently traveling on business and had a credit card problem, and Sandra was the only accountable person, so you're absolutely right that this is something that comes up. But from talking to Sandra, it sounds like the current bank we have would only allow it to be one person.
So I would have to check with them. I have no problems putting another accountable person on there because currently, under our current situation, if we even have a billing question, I am the one that has to call.
Right.
Now, we do have, the finance department has all other capabilities, so the finance department can issue credit cards. They can log people out.
Right.
But as far as this goes, I have no problem if they want to add like the accounting supervisor on there also. And that way, in my absence, she could also issue.
So I would have, there's a couple ways to tackle this. Tim, I think you have a great suggestion. We could name a specific office or individual. So you could say the accounting supervisor and/or GM, or you could say the utility CFO or
Finance department.
or a designated personnel. So what's happened in the past where someone has left on vacation, there is a notification sent out by Ed, for example, that would said, hey, I am designating my responsibilities while I'm traveling to Sandra, so she could sign, for example, wastewater permits. And that authority is transferred. So we could put in there a designated person or as designated by the CFO, so we could handle it that way. We could designate a department head, as you suggested, and/or Ed, but that's a board decision, and I will defer to the board on that. I'm happy to edit as you see
I think
fit.
the expertise within Ed and Sandra and the group, or our employee base, can tell us who's most appropriate. I'm just concerned that there's a single designee.
Understood.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable with either saying, I think the designee idea is the best idea, and I don't think Ed wants to be bothered if I'm on vacation, if somebody's saying, hey, call the credit card company and here's the link. So I think somebody in the finance department can be trained on doing that.
I think it leaves some flexibility too.
Yes.
You know, so like Tim said, I think you guys can handle that and who you deem
Yeah.
able.
So we could modify the resolution to say or designated representative?
Would it be the CFO designee, the CFO or the CFO designee?
I was going to draft it as, or as designated by, or the, as designated by the CFO, or representative as designated by the CFO, in writing.
Sandra, what do you think of that?
I think that's perfectly fine.
Tim, is that,
Yep,
Yeah.
no, that's good.
Okay. We can still vote on this pending that tweak?
So signatures become a problem, and that I would, Sandra, I don't think that this is a pressing,
No, I can-
from
I
a
think it
timing
can be tabled.
standpoint.
It's not pressing, we can bring it back in 2 weeks. I just can't start the process of getting the cards without the resolution. In the past, our credit card policy was enough, but then the State Board of Accounts actually put out there and said you have to have this resolution before you can get the new cards.
So I can do this with the board's permission. I think Danny has the resolutions. I can handwrite that edit in, and with the board's permission, and you would sign that resolution, and with the board's permission, we would substitute that page, that handwritten page for the typed written page this week to formalize the resolution with the board's explicit permission to do that. Or we can bring it back at the next meeting, your pleasure.
Honestly, I'm fine with either. It's whatever the board, and it's not like it's going to take a long time if we have to bring it back. Will you have to read the whole thing again just to be formal? Or will this be based on last meeting per this resolution number?
If the board waived that reading, yes.
Yeah,
I'd say table it.
I'd be fine with tabling. You guys okay just reading it next time and voting it on a clean copy?
Yeah, I think so.
Good, Aaron, with that?
I'll follow my man's Tim's lead.
so,
All right.
motion to table resolution 2021-07.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Bill to table the resolution 2021-07. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. I'm not opposed.
Okay.
I'm just late.
All right, that's what we'll do.
I will see you in 2 weeks.
I won't have any more questions, I don't think, in 2 weeks. All right, next item is approval of the claims, payrolls, and transfers. Everyone had a chance to review those, and are there any questions on those? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve claims, payroll, transfers dated July 21st, 2021 in the amount of $644,309.73 for claims and payroll and $163,557 for transfers.
Second.
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Bill to approve the claims, payrolls, transfers dated July 21st, 2021 in the amount of $644,509.73 for claims and payroll and $163,557 for transfers. Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next item is other business. Anybody have anything else for the board tonight?
So I had the opportunity today to spend a little bit of time with our customer service professionals. I met briefly with Lisa Taylor, supervisor, and learned how there's an update going on for our late pay exempt customers. That list of stormwater property owners is being updated. The customer service handbook is being updated.
That's wrong.
I then had the opportunity to sit with Jalen Johnson, customer service representative, and saw her complete an emergency line service order, accept and process a payment agreement, payment arrangement, and a new customer service agreement. So I just want to report to the board that our customer service personnel made a great impression on me, and it right in line with that ethos of neighbor serving neighbor.
Thank you, Aaron. Anybody else have anything for the board? Any public comment? Ed, anything come in from the public?
No, Mr. Chairman, I didn't have anything come in from the public.
All right, looks like our next meeting will be on Wednesday, August 18th at 5 p.m. Anybody else have anything before we adjourn?
Nope.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Tim to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Stand adjourned.